Hello and welcome to the Albion Meta Tierlist March 2024. It's been a while since the previous one with a lot of changes and most notably a new weapon tree, the shapeshifter weapons. We've now had some time for the meta to settle, and by the way, links to everything in this video are in the description below. One thing to note is that I will not be talking about the new crystal weapons that have been revealed because, well, they are not playable yet, and it's hard to know how viable they will be, but for sure, once they see play, I'll add them as well. Without further ado, let's jump into the solo content. For Mists and Corrupted, as usual, I have two separate tier lists for these because the meta is different enough. Certain weapons are more powerful in Mists than in Corrupted. Not having to worry about avoiding rats, natural hazards like lava and traps, but also the fact that the terrain you're fighting in is usually a narrow corridor brings a slightly different dynamic to the PvP encounters. These tier lists are constructed assuming playing near perfection. While mobility is king in Mists, light crossbow I have to put pretty high due to how powerful it is in the hands of a skilled player. But it goes without saying though that double-bladed, Prowler Staff, and Bloodletter are incredibly strong and they're all very close. Primal Staff is stronger in Corrupteds, personally, but obviously still good in Mists. Now, one thing you might be wondering about is the Pole Hammer, and the only reason it's so high is because when used well, you can catch double-bladed staff users. By stunning a double-bladed out of their E, you stop their mobility by a lot. So even though it's worse than Great Hammer overall, it deserves a spot in A tier due to essentially being a Tomb Hammer with a better matchup against double-bladed users. If you're skilled enough, you can reliably pull this off. Although, keep in mind, obviously, ping is an important factor. One thing to notice is that this tier list is not necessarily what's the most popular, but what's the most OP in the hands of a skilled player. Otherwise, there's not that many changes actually. Other shapeshifter weapons don't do as well as expected. Hell Spawn is not horrible, I guess, but that's about it. For Corrupted specifically, we see less mobility builds and more builds that can duel well or abuse the environment. So let's take Grail Seeker as an example. Even though it's horrible in Mists, it's actually not bad in Corrupted. Bows as well are also generally better in Corrupted. Something like Warbow will struggle to ever finish off targets in Mists, but in Corrupted it's way easier. And also it's easier to reliably land your E due to the corridors providing less room to maneuver around. Heron Spear and Trinity Spear notably are way better in Corrupted than in Mist as well. Cursed Skull is another solid pick. While not bad in Mists, you basically cover the whole hallway with your E in Corrupted. Note the jump in strength for the regular bow when compared to Mists. The regular bow works very well in Corrupted as a dueling weapon, but in Mists, it's not quite as strong due to mobility issues. Overall, a lot of these weapons are close, and it just comes down to how good you are with it, and also how much spec you have, of course. That is a big impact, the item power. Your favorite playstyle will impact which weapon you should pick for sure, but anything in A tier or higher you can play and have great success with. Even some of the stuff in B tier, to be honest. Many of these ratings are really close, and depending on who you ask, they will give you different answers. I tried to consult with as many top players as I could, but I also checked the stats and the leaderboards, and ultimately this is what I believe to be, for the most part, pretty accurate. There's many content creators I would recommend, but overall, Fakturka over at Twitch and YouTube, if you want, has a good mix of Mists and Corrupted's gameplay. He does both, so definitely check him out. He probably doesn't need the shoutout, most of you guys already know him, but yeah. So for Hellgates, we had a bit of a fun game balancing moment where SBI allowed awakened weapons to bypass the IP cap restriction, and well, we had a bunch of people in point for weapons completely annihilating everyone who didn't have an awakened weapon. Everyone with a brain cell was warning SBI that this would happen, but they still let it go on for over a month. The meta was definitely not in a healthy place where point for hell spawns were just obliterating everything, but now we've stabilized a little bit in the meta, and even though hell spawn is still the S tier go-to build, at least you don't need to invest into an awakened weapon to have a chance at winning. Overall though, one-shot is even weaker than it used to be with the new potions, but people don't even bother with cleanse potions because you don't even need them to win versus one-shots, and also they're expensive. But anyhow, we have the usual healer plus DPS setups working very well, with the only alternative that's even remotely viable is Staff of Balance with Blazing. King Killua does a great job showcasing this comp, and I highly recommend you check out the video, link in the description below. But overall, the classic one-shots with Grail Seeker or Hammers just don't quite cut it, and besides that comp, it's basically healer plus DPS all the way. For 5v5 Hellgates, Bear is the way to go and is very dominant and annoying to play against, whether you're playing front to back or the Bear dive comp, which I think is not too far off, by the way. Which one is the best is hard to say, but a strong front to back team should come out on top, and that's why we have that as the top comp at the moment. The old clap dive just falls even further behind at B tier alongside one shot, as they just can't really compete. Bear is just too strong at the moment, and so is Ent. Some honorable mentions for comps that don't quite cut it, but could be playable at perhaps C tier is the old Axe dive with Halberd and Carrion, the old Forge Hammers dive, which since the nerf is not quite as strong, and you could even play a comp that I saw some players on East server, they're playing Great Hammer Ent and 2 Eagles with a Blight Staff, but I wouldn't recommend playing these if you're tryharding. I have put 2 links in the description below for videos you can watch. One is from Juan playing Fire Staff, and one is from Mimimi AVZ from the East server with a nature healing POV. Check these out for sure if you want more 5v5 Hellgate content. For the 10v10 Hellgates, the meta isn't quite 100% solved, but here is my best understanding of it after having played it for the last few weeks. At number 1, we have a Hellfire front to back / brawl comp, which is very flexible in what weapons you can run. The usual Hammer, Mace, Arcane, Holy Nature is there. But then for the DPS, which is the interesting part, most teams run Ent, Hellfire or Carrion Collar, Dawnsong or One-Handed Fire, and Cursed Skull or Bear. That pretty much covers all the front to back variants that see play at the moment, and I can't really say which one is the best, because I've seen a lot of teams run different weapons in those slots. In the A tier though, we have the new era of one-shots, which I've classified as leather one-shot.
No, she's better.
Yo, can we hit on fire overall? 3, 2, 1,
Yeah.
no? Basically, you put all your DPS on leather, tenacity jackets to increase survivability and almost give up on being able to one-shot tanks, and you focus on killing leather and cloth users. The current strongest version in my opinion is Spirit Hunter, Triple Clarent and the Demonic. Another option is just to run triple Battle Braces one-shot, but I do think that version is worse, probably B tier. While on the topic of B tier, we have the standard classic one-shot variants, where basically everyone runs cloth. I think they're all pretty weak because of how hard it is to reset and kite, but this is probably the best setup you can run at the moment. Another comp that is seeing experimentation is playing front to back with Eagles wearing plate like soldier armor, for example, but probably needs more testing to see just how viable it is. For 10v10 content, I would, obviously besides my channel, I would highly advise to check out Kazutora on Twitch and YouTube. Although his content is in Russian, he does provide a variety of content and is one of the few people showcasing 10v10 Hellgates. Mostly one shot, but recently I saw him playing dive as well, so definitely check that out. And finally we're here at the top 10 weapons. I actually took inspiration from SBI and decided to delete the 5v5 and 20v20 category. Okay, no, seriously though, nobody plays this content anymore from my understanding, so it's hard to really tell what the meta is or what's viable, since almost all of the GVGers are now playing Raven or other games. So anyhow, number 1, we have Primal Staff. Even after the nerf, it's still a very powerful tool, almost no matter what content you're playing with. It has an overloaded kit, and it's basically a better carving for any group content, and it's very dominant in mists and also corrupteds, especially corrupteds. The only situation it's not really that strong in is like 2v2 Hellgates and HCE, and for transporting, I guess. We have the usual Hallowfall and Bloodletter that are still incredibly flexible overall. One-handed mace, especially since the damage buff is now more viable for smaller scale, not just as a tank, but also as a melee bruiser. But it's also the main weapon that callers usually pick for ZVZs as a clump tank. We have the light crossbow, shatter caller, frost staff, and permafrost. These are weapons that are historically incredibly versatile and still keep their very high rating. Carving is just a worse bear at the moment, but is still very solid, and that should tell you just how strong Primal Staff is. So, Great Frost with the recent buffs should be seeing more play, especially in small scale, but probably mostly in bomb squads, but time will tell. Very solid for PV, as all Frost Staffs are. While on the topic of bomb squads, just earlier today I saw a very nice highlight reel of some ZVZ clips from the East server showcasing immense skill, and I highly recommend you to check it out to see some of these weapons that have been mentioned in play. Links are in the description below as always. And that concludes the tier list for March 2024. A lot of people have requested that I do these every month, so let's say if we hit 250 likes, I'll update it for April as well. If you enjoy the content, the best way to show your support is by subscribing and leaving a like. I tried something different this time where I shout out different content creators and showcase different POVs for different content. Let me know what you think about that. I'm also considering adding a ZVZ section where I also talk about the ZVZ meta, bombing, open world, castles, and overall just the meta development. Let me know what you think about that and the structure of the video overall. If you have any feedback, all comments are appreciated. Don't forget to join the community Discord for early access to content and also giveaways, or if you just want to hang out and give your feedback about the tier list, everyone is welcome. Link in the description below for everything. As always, more content to come. I'm trying to get videos out every Friday now, and we'll have more regular Albion uploads. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and have a good one.